You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain hollers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Carrie today. Saw some posts that she had put on Facebook, and she's got some very interesting things that have been happening over the years. But Carrie, it's a pleasure to have you here. Let's start out first. You had been mentioning in the pre-interview about how there's a relation to Harley's episode that you had heard on my podcast earlier.
Oh, yes, definitely, Jeremiah. And by the way, thank you for letting me share my experiences. It took me about 2 years to finally come forward and want to share anything, because I had put a post, when I first had my first encounter, I put a post on my local Facebook group in the same area that Harley is in, and I got bullied and attacked so much within probably less than 5 minutes. I had to take my post down, and it was just, people were so hateful, and they didn't want to hear it. And maybe it's just a conspiracy theory, but I don't think all of those people are just normal people. I think some of those people might be like government people that are out there just to attack the real people that have had encounters, so we won't come forward and share our experiences, because it was pretty brutal. But I've had encounters where mine started in the same area that Harley is from.
Yeah, and I do want to address something real quick. So that happens to me all the time as well. It is not fun, but if you keep that post up for about 2 to 3 weeks, the people then that have seen things will start to send you DMs. It happens every time. I get made fun of in these groups, but then 2 to 3 weeks later, the people will start to come out with, yes, okay, I did have things going on. I need to talk to you about it. So just
That's
off the
so
side,
crazy.
Yeah, for listeners. But Carrie, let's start at the beginning. Where did this all start to happen? If you could share the county, the state, and what were the first things that you noticed?
This happened when we first, I'm originally from Virginia, where I grew up, the border of West Virginia and Virginia. It was very mountainous, very hilly, very woodsy. So I grew up playing in the woods, hunting, fishing. So I was pretty much very familiar with the woods. And me and my husband moved to Middle Tennessee. Newport was the county. It was in the foothills of the Smokies, probably 25, 30 minutes from Gatlinburg. Very small town by the river. There's a couple rivers in the area. And we lived, it was called, at the end of our road was called Rankin, Rankin Hill Wildlife Management Refuge. Why it's that long name, I have no idea. But nobody ever went there, really. And in the summertime, it's filled up with water. They had a lot of bass fishing tournaments there. It would fill into Douglas Dam Lake area overflow. And in the winter, they'd suck up all the water and use it for energy at the dam. But in the fall and winter, or even in the summer, there was a lot of trails through there. You could walk, and we had kayaks, so we would literally just walk across the street from our house, a little one road in and out, and you jump right on the railroad tracks, and we walk right to the wildlife refuge and just look around, because it was like a scooped out bowl right in the middle of the Smoky Mountain foothills, and it was beautiful. And there was nobody there. So it was a good little spot to walk. We didn't really do any fishing, but that's not where I had our first encounter, but that is where I first started noticing things. When we first moved into that area, we were moving boxes in, and as we were moving boxes in, we had a long gravel driveway, and when you pull up to our house, you're facing the house, but you park on the side of the house. So behind Our house was about, I don't know, 5 acres. And about 3 of it was flat, clear, no trees, no brush, no nothing. In a very small, 2-foot deep, about 4-foot wide creek, when water was running through it, would go through the middle of it, down from the overrun fill off of the mountains. And so so you parked on the side of the house, and the woods were, I don't know, 150 feet from where you park in the house. And we had a back deck. And as we were moving boxes in, I heard these very weird whistles. And I remember making a comment to my husband, and we were laughing. I'm like, wow, I didn't know we were moving into the Amazon jungle, because it was so loud and the whistles were so strange. It sounded like some kind of bird you'd hear in the Amazon. And then there was a whistle all the way across the field, like 3 acres away, and it would answer it back, the other whistle back, and it was so loud you could hear it. Most birds you can't hear super loud 3 acres away, answering back and forth. And it was just like nothing I had ever heard before. And he stopped for a second. He was like, yeah, that is weird, isn't it? And that's where it started. And I was not a Bigfoot believer. Of course, I saw the Patty film. Everybody did. I never listened to any shows, watched any film, didn't know anything about it except seeing that one little Patty clip on TV. And I just did not. I believe in the Lord, and I don't know. I didn't believe, and I think I was very closed-minded. I didn't think that I was, but I was. It's nice and comfortable thinking that nothing else exists out there except what we're told. You're told growing up that other creatures and monsters and beings aren't real, besides demons, angels, heaven, hell, people, things you can see, and that sort of stuff, and nothing else. And that's comfortable thinking that. It's scary thinking and knowing now that other things are definitely 100% out there. And it's terrifying. I think that's why a lot of people bully others, because it's scary. It is scary. My first encounter was only about 3 weeks after moving in. We noticed that metal shiny pieces of my husband's car, I know it sounds crazy, were starting to be pulled off. Where we lived, there wasn't any houses really around. It was farmhouses spread far apart. There wasn't people like right next door. I think I'd said once before, there wasn't enough people where you turn your light on for trick-or-treaters. There just wasn't anybody. It was very remote. And I've also said, the more remote you live, the more remote other things live too, is what I have found out. I woke up about 3:30 in the morning, and I was dead asleep. I woke up with this overwhelming feeling of just dread and anxiety, and I did not know why. We always came in and out the front door because we had a small little deck, and we had a little spot where we would wipe our feet and take our shoes off. And I jumped up, and my husband had this giant handheld spotlight. It looked like an old radar detector. And I don't even know why I went to the back door, but it was like I knew to go to the back door. And we didn't even use the back door unless we were sitting on the back deck. Went right to the back door, opened the back door a little bit, about halfway, and I shine the light across the field, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I was thinking, first of all, there was always deer out there. We had a family of fox, deer. I had a pet skunk that would come out of the woods. I would feed cheese popcorn to. Yes, and no, that's crazy. He would come out, and I'd feed him cheese popcorn, and he'd just go back in the woods when he had his fill. So there was a ton of wildlife, and that's why we liked living there. And I shined the light across the field, and I was going real slow, and I was seeing nothing. And I'm like thinking, that's weird. There definitely should be some deer out here. It was, oh gosh, I want to say the end of January. So I knew it was cold, but it didn't matter. There was always deer, and I kept seeing nothing. So I get panned over to the creek, and all of a sudden, I see this bear, and I'm like, wow, there's a bear at the creek. We've been here a little while, and I've already asked the neighbors, and all of the neighbors, and we walked the dogs. We would see neighbors out. We would ask them, hey, the bear, and they're like, no, bears never come out of the smoke down at the national park. They don't need to because the tourists leave enough food for them to eat. They don't need to come. They never come this far. Never seen any. Been here 20 years. Everybody had the same story. So I see this bear, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a bear. Wow. And then all of a sudden it stands up, and I'm like, what? And then the light hits its body, and the best way I can describe it is when it hit its body, it's all the light sucked into it. It was like if you ever have a flashlight and you can twist the end of the flashlight and you can make the circle on that's shooting out the light bigger or tinier by twisting the end of the flashlight. That's what happened when I hit it with the flashlight, except it happened pretty fast, and then all the light was gone into this thing, and I'm like, what? But its body illuminated because it had absorbed all the light. I don't even know how that makes sense, but that's what happened. And I saw that it had hands, and I'm like, wow, what the heck? Like, my mind was totally trying to figure out a box to put this in because I didn't know what it was. I knew it wasn't a human, and its hands were like ashy gray, hung down past its knees. It did have a little bit of a belly. I don't know if it was a female or male because it was turned sideways, so I didn't get a front view, and I'm grateful that I did not see its face full on because I still have that night that burned into my mind like a record. Like, I can't stop overplaying that. And before I had a chance to do anything else or even figure out what am I going to do, what is this, this all happened so quick. But they say sometimes when traumatic things happen, it feels like time stopped. That's what it feels like, that time had stopped. And it was just going like super slow motion. And it leaned its head back and it let out a scream. I've never heard anything that, I don't even know how I still have eardrums. I've never heard anything that loud and that long in my entire life. It literally sounded like the worst horror flick you could watch, a woman being murdered and her guts coming out, like very guttural, screechy, just scream, and it didn't take a breath, was the crazy part. It was at least 20 to 25 seconds long when I've replayed it in my head. And when that happened, I was behind a metal aluminum door, and it had little, like 9 panes of windows in it. It was a modular home, so a regular modular home back door. And I was halfway in, halfway out of it. And when that scream happened, I crumpled over in a little ball, but in a standing up position. And this wave hit me in the head, and it was like, whoom, 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 went all the way through my body, through my toes. And I felt all of my organs vibrate. If you pull up to somebody at a stoplight and their bass on their stereo was too loud, and you can feel like your insides thumping a little bit, that's what happened. And I was unable to move. And it wasn't because of fear. I've been in the woods, and I've been, oh gosh, deep in the woods, 12 miles hunting by myself alone. The way before I knew this was out there. And I've seen bear and stuff, and I haven't in mountain lion. In West Virginia, I actually got chased by a bear. Wasn't really afraid because I was in the house. I could have shut the door, but I was frozen. I was not able to move. And after about 20 seconds, when it stopped, for the last 3 seconds, it seemed like I started to like unfreeze, and I started being able to move. It's so weird. It's if you're frozen and all of a sudden something's thawing and you're starting to come unthawed and you can move. And I was able to move, and I jumped behind the door, and I was like, oh dear God, what just happened? Like this isn't happening. It can't exist. It had hair, not fur. And I could somewhat see skin through the hair. It was about 90 feet from me, and it was a clear vision. The woods were in the background, so there was no trees, no bushes, nothing obstructing my view. I know 100% what I saw, and I have said time and time again, I would take a lie detector test any day for anything I said, that it is 100% the truth. And I'm mad that people get bullied or the government doesn't tell people about this, because these things are out there and they know they're out there. And some of them are bad and some of them are good. After that happened and I saw this, I said, "Oh dear God, what is this?" And I'm like, "Okay, that's Bigfoot." Well, I mean, what else could it be? That's the only thing I knew closely related to what it looked like before that I'd seen the Patty film. So I'm like, as much as I don't want to do this, I have to do it again, because I cannot go around telling my husband and my kids and everybody else, "Guess what, guys? I saw Bigfoot." They're going to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure you did." So I'm like, got to do it again. So I sure did. I shined the light on it again, and I did not want to do it, but I had to be 100% sure. This time it had moved up into the forest a little bit, but it was winter, so there wasn't any leaves on the trees. There were just a bunch of brown sticks, so I could see it, and it was like a mahogany-ish, real dark black. Well, I wouldn't say black, but woody mahogany brown, very dark. And it did not have like a cone-shaped head. It just had a head on top of big shoulders. We measured later on how tall it was. It was at least 8 feet tall. If I had to guess, I would say 600 pounds. It did seem to have breast and a stomach, like a 5 or 6 month pregnant woman. I could see that the side view of the chest and the stomach, the hair was a lot thinner in that area. And it did have, I could see a little bit of the calves, but I couldn't see the feet because it was standing in the creek. And it was bent over sideways, drinking from the creek. I don't know if it was scooping it up with his hand or actually had its mouth in the creek. But so I had a really good side view. I had very broad shoulders, and I hit it with the light again, and I was ready for the scream this time. The exact same scenario happened again. But since I was expecting it, I wasn't frozen. I didn't get frozen, and I definitely did not go outside. I would just kept the door cracked just enough to where not that door wouldn't have done. That thing was so big, it could have come right through the wall if it wanted to. That door wouldn't have done anything. So I hit it with the light again, same thing, same scream, same length of time, and then my insides, they rippled again. And then I was like, "Yep," and it stopped screaming, and I took my finger off the trigger of the light that you had to put your hand on the trigger to get the light going. And as soon as I let my hand off the trigger, it stopped, and I'm like, "Yep, I just saw freaking Bigfoot." Here I am. I didn't laugh at anybody in public or make fun of them or bully them, but I was kind of laughing to myself. Oh my gosh, these people are nuts. That's so ridiculous. These things don't exist. Yes, they do. And I laid there. I shut the door, locked the door. I laid there all night. I couldn't go back to sleep. I didn't want to wake my husband up. So I lay there all night thinking, like, what the heck am I going to tell him? Like, he somewhat believed, and he had brought it to my attention before a couple times from shows. And now here I am, like, so when we woke up, I told him, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, let's go down and look." And we went down and looked, and there were tracks there. We measured 18 inches long. We didn't know anything about casting or what even casting was, footprints, anything like that. And we measured from where I saw the back tree. Like when I saw it standing there, I could see a tree in the background. So I estimated the height, and we measured from where I could see the top of the head with the tree in the background. And it was about 8 feet or a little bit over. And that was the very first experience with them. And it has not stopped since then.
Carrie, that is absolutely incredible. First off, thank you for sharing that. So to clarify, you do not live at this property anymore, right?
No, we do not.
After this started to happen, did at any point they start to come closer to the house?
Oh, so much. That is why we moved. Yep, big time. And there was more than one. And it was nightly. And at the time, my husband was a truck driver, and he was just starting out in truck driving. So there was a lot of times he had to be gone at night. Oh, let me say this too. I didn't have any guns anymore because I gave up hunting after we moved to the Smokies. I don't know, I just had a whole different view of wildlife. Like I said, a pet skunk that would come out of the woods, I'd feed cheese popcorn. There was a bunch of baby deer that the mom had abandoned that I adopted and I named. There was Laverne and Shirley, Lucy and Ethel. Like, they all had names, and they lived under the deck. And I would bottle feed them and stuff, and then when they got big enough, they would just take off. So I got rid of all my guns. But when I saw this, I got the biggest gun I could get. I got a 50 caliber gun with the scope. And there's a reason why I'm telling you that, because one night when my husband had to do an overnight trip, and it wasn't too long after this, I heard our front deck was about 10 by 10 wooden, and I usually did not stay up this late. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I was going to bed. I have a service dog. He is my bestest friend in the world. He's a large Rottweiler, and this dog is stuck to me like glue. I take a shower, and he sits there like guards the shower, like, so no, I guess serial murderers will get me in the shower. I don't know. It's what he thinks. So we were getting ready to go to bed, and he's got a bed right next to mine, and his name is Kaz. So we're walking to go by the bedroom. You have to go by the front door to get into the master bedroom, which is in the front. So I hear this stomping. All I could see in my head was like a little kid doing the high step marching round in circles. My girls did it, and they're grown now, but that's what I could hear. And I'm like thinking, okay, you just imagine it not happening. Anytime anything happens, I try to debunk it in any way I can. I'm not the first to go, oh my gosh, that's a ghost. Oh my gosh, that's a big. I try to debunk it in any way I can, and then when I can't, it just is what it is. I can't. And I kept trying, okay, what's this? It's that. And it kept getting louder. And this went on for 4 minutes. So I'm standing about 6 feet from the front door, and my dog, he starts growling. First, he was looking at the door, and his head was going from side to side. When dogs do that, and they're trying to figure something out, like he's going, okay, it's not mom. She's right here. Okay, it's not dad. Okay, it's not this. Okay, it's not that. He's going back and forth. And all of a sudden, after he goes to the whole scenario of people he knows in his head, he starts backing up. And he starts growling. This meanest growl I've never heard come out of him. And his whole body puffed up, like all his hair starts standing up, not just a stripe down his back, but everywhere. And I was like, okay, I'm actually scared. So then I was praying to God it wasn't going to happen, but it did. I saw my doorknob turning. And I heard this after the fact, that they like to imitate what people do. After I saw the first one, I was so paranoid about, and like I said, this modular home, ours wasn't made very good. It could have come right through the wall. It could have literally put its hand right through the wall if it wanted to. They were paper thin. And the doorknob started turning. Let me back up. Before that, I kept always checking the windows and the door locks like 50 times a night. And every time I would say, did you check the door? Yes, I checked it. I've checked it 15 times, Carrie. I've already checked it. And I would just check it every night. And when I would do it, I would turn the doorknob and it would go click. It'd make its clicking sound. So the front doorknob started turning back and forth, just like I did when I checked to see if they were locked. And it was doing that clicking sound. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared. And I was standing right there. I was like, my feet felt like they had cement shoes on them. Like they didn't, my top of my body was trying to go in the bedroom, but my legs wouldn't move. I was like, okay, I'm so scared. And then I'm like, and then I felt my heart like, and I started hyperventilating because here I'm alone and I'm in this, I've seen this thing outside, and now I knew what was out front. I knew it wasn't a person. I just knew that it was them. They have an energy that they put off, and whenever they're around, I don't know, I can feel them. I don't know, just an energy I can feel when they're around. And I knew it was them. And all of a sudden, I said in my head, I said, okay, Carrie, calm down. And I only said this in my head. I said, okay, Carrie, calm down. This is really happening. Go get your gun. And I had it loaded, and it was right under my side of the bed. So the very second I got done saying that, I had an answer back in my head, which I still can't believe that they can do this, but they can. It said, and I've heard where people say it sounds like computer generated, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. But then I thought about why would they say that, and I understand, because they said it very slow and very precise, like they wanted you to hear every word they were saying, and it said it just like this: do not bother. It won't do any good against us. So I can see why they would say it would be sounding like a computer saying that. So as soon as that happened, I was like, what? I started like literally shaking my head back. I'm like, what? We're like looking around. And of course, I'm the only one there. And then my dog, he's still growling and barking. He wasn't barking, but he was growling, mean growl. And he was ready to jump me. He was ready not to run away. And I was like, what do I do? Instead of saying, I start laughing like a crazy person, because I'm thinking, my thoughts went through my head so fast. Okay, what am I going to do? Blow a hole through the front door? Of course not, because then my husband's going to come home. How am I going to explain that? What if I'm wrong? What if it's a person? I don't want to kill anybody. Am I going to kill somebody? Am I going to open the door? Absolutely not. I'm not going to open. So what am I going to do? I can't do anything. There's nothing I can do. So I start laughing. What if they're right? And then what if it's more than one? And I shoot one. Then I'm really in trouble. What if I miss? It's only one shot in there. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I go and I start laughing like a nut. Yep. I did. Jeremiah started laughing like a nut. So then I go and I sit down on the bed, and I had to, it was everything I could do. I had to grab my dog by his neck, because he's not on a leash or collar, and drag him to the room. And it was really hard. He did not want to, his feet were like cemented to the floor too. And I get him in the room, and he's sitting there right by me. He's still growling. And I just started praying as loud as I could. I said, in the name of Jesus, you have to leave here. In the name of Jesus, this is holy ground. This is my house. You are not welcome here. You need to leave. And as soon as I started praying, it was like deafening quiet. It was already quiet, but it went, it's so hard. I wish there was different words to explain it. It went quieter. It almost hurt your ears and went so quiet. And after that, it was nothing. And there was no way that I was going to sleep. I just laid there all night, and I'm like, how could they? It was like a thought that was not my own, that came deep from within the middle of my head, like right in the set. If you drilled right down to the middle of my head, that's where that voice came from. And if you ask me to describe the voice, like if it was a male, female, I can't, because it didn't have a male or female tone. It was a thought that was put into my head that said that. And they have talked to me 3 or 4 times now, very short, but they've talked to me. That next day, of course, my husband came home, and I told him. And then I told him what happened. I'm glad we still have a door on the house. What's he going to say? And I said, this whole Bigfoot thing has really got to me. I said, let's do a test. If they're really real, he brought back a giant watermelon he got from South Carolina. This thing was so big. It must have weighed 50 pounds, the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. We cut it in half. It was just the two of us. We couldn't even eat half. And I said, you know what? It's cut in half. Let's take it back to the edge of the wood line behind the house. I'm going to set it in this dirt spot. There was nothing there. And it's like March now. Excuse me. And it was getting a little bit warm. So I said, I'm going to set this watermelon on this dirt spot. And we waited till the edge of dark, like 5 minutes before it got dark. And I said, as soon as it gets light, we'll get up in the morning, like the second it's daylight, and go and see what's happened with this watermelon. So, sorry. So I carry this watermelon out there, and it took 2 arms wrapped around this thing. And it was really juicy. But unless you tipped it sideways, there really wasn't any juice running out. So I set it on the spot, the edge of the wood line, where I had seen this Bigfoot. So the next morning, and we watched and we waited till it got dark, set it there, and then it got dark and we went to bed. And the next morning, the second we get up, sometimes he always gets up before daylight, and he gets me up, and we wait till it turns daylight, and we look, and I'm like, I don't think it's there, and I'm like, please don't leave me, just stay on the back deck. He's on the back deck watching, and I walk over there. The watermelon's gone. There's no rinds, there's no seeds, there's no nothing. Now, if it was a deer or any other animal, it could have chewed it up right there. The ground would have been a wet mess. The ground was so dry, you could have picked it up and it'd have been like sand. There wasn't one seed, no trace of that watermelon anywhere. And not only that, okay, say some animal drug it off. They had hands and they just drug it off, or they ate the whole thing right there. But there was two, not one, but two snake skins put in its place, and they were stretched out and they were laid side by side. And one was about 4 feet long and the other one was about 6 feet long. And they were laying right there in the same spot of the watermelon. And I'm like, I was just standing there frozen. And then my husband starts yelling, Carrie, you okay? You okay? Because I wasn't moving. And he's, hey. And I was just like, yeah, I'm thinking, yes, this is really this is, if the other experiences didn't already confirm it, yeah, this confirmed it. I carried him in, and he was like, what is that? And I told him, he was like, oh my gosh. So I didn't know what to do. So I put the snake skins back out there, and I just said, thank you, whatever. I'm sitting there talking to the woods, and this is not the first time I said that. I'm talking to the woods. What has my life become? I'm sitting there talking to the woods. I said, I know you guys are around. I can feel you. Thank you for the snake skins, but I'm going to leave them out here in nature. And I walked back in the house. So the next day, I go into town, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to get to the grocery store before it got too crowded. And I get to the end of my road, and if you go left, there's a bridge right there that goes over the Noachucky River. And that goes down to the wildlife refuge the other way, the other end of my road. So the river's right there, and it'll take you into Morristown, Morristown. Where I've heard on one podcast there was a sighting at Panther Creek State Park, somebody said. So that's not too far from that area. You make a right, it takes you into town, about 5 miles away. So of course I got my service dog, and he's looking at the trees and he's growling. And I'm like, and I look and I'm like, what, buddy? What do you see? A squirrel? What is it? He hates squirrels. So I said, there's nothing there. I don't see anything. And he is locked onto something. And he's staring, and I'm like, I don't see anything. There's nothing there, Kaz. Stop. And then all of a sudden, I looked down out the passage. See, this was on the ground on the passenger side. So I leaned up. I don't even know how, some of these things, I don't even know how I knew, but I just did. I put the car in park, and I almost got out. Thank God I didn't. And I leaned over to the passenger side, looked on the ground, and I think I sent you pictures. If I didn't, I will. I've got them. I saw deer legs. And the crazy thing about deer legs, any hunters will know this, you there's no need to do that. It's not how you skin a deer. And that they were snapped off at the knees, not up where the shoulder is, but snapped off. And the reason I say snapped off and twisted off is because you can literally see one piece of bone sticking up about 2 inches higher than the other, and it looks like a serrated edge knife on the bone, and the skin is twisted round and round like if you wring out a towel. And I'm like, what the heck? And then a little ways away, I saw a spine just the spine, and there was nothing on it. It wasn't like a dried up old spine, like there just wasn't any meat on it. And I'm like, what the heck? So I'm like, okay, somebody hit a deer. So I'm looking around, I don't see any blood. And I'm like, okay, maybe the coyotes drug it down there's giant boulders on the left where the river is that are, oh gosh, the size of a hood of your truck, boulders. And I'm like, okay, maybe they drug it over the side. And I'm looking and I don't see any blood, any body, nothing. And then I get ready to get out and a rock hits my truck. Not a big rock, maybe the size of, like a golf ball. And it put a big dent, like a golf ball size dent in the door, the same door that my Rottweiler is at the window at growling. Thank God I didn't break the window. And I heard that, and then he's still growling, and then I look at the deer legs again as I'm taking pictures, and I see one tiny little drop of blood come out of one of the end of the legs. And I'm like, oh crap, this just happened, because it's mostly all bone and skin from the knees down. There's no meat, there's nothing. So for a drop of blood, one little drop to come out, this just happened. And this was early in the morning. So a little bit before 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, and I'm like, oh yeah, time to go. So I got the heck out of Dodge. I almost got out of the truck. I'm so glad I didn't, because I don't want to end up one of these missing people. So I'm driving down this road, oh gosh, quarter of a mile from there, and you have to drive in between giant rock wall. It just sheared off because it's part of the Smoky Mountains, and just like solid rock wall. And you drive down this tunnel of a country road of 2 rock walls and trees. And one of the rock walls starts to gradually decline, and it goes to the river. The other one just stays a sheer rock wall, goes about 20 feet in the air. And all of a sudden I hear, and I'm going real slow because I'm scanning, like looking everywhere. I'm like, there's got to be a deer. There's got to be a deer body. There's something. It's just, this can't be. And my dog's still growling. He's still growling. And all of a sudden I hear in my head, look up. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, who the heck? I'm looking around like, who said that? What the heck? I don't have my radio on. The Bluetooth, and I don't have it does, but I don't know how to use it. The Bluetooth thing that you connect to your vehicle, I don't know how to do all that. And there's nobody around. There's nobody behind me. There's not a soul in sight. So I stop in the road, and I look up, and I see a Bigfoot standing on the cliff. Now, the sun is coming up, so the sun is at its back, and it's standing kind of, I don't know, if you've seen somebody getting ready to fight, or a boxer or military, and their arms are sticking out to the side just a little bit away from their body, and they're like in a very alert position, a stance. And I could see the sunlight shining through its hair that was hanging off of its arms as it had its arms out to the side. And it did not look like the same one. This one was more orangey color. Not as orange as an orangutan, but a more orangey, not as dark. And this one looked a lot more hulked out, beefed up. Oh, it's hard to tell how tall it was because it was on a 20-foot cliff, but it was a big son of a gun. It was big. Oh, I'd say 800 pounds easily, 4.5 feet wide, had big arms, jaunt, it looked like an old picture of Lou Ferrigno, or like when they're all muscled out. And I said, and I knew that because I knew they talked to me in my head before, and I knew this was my chance. So I said in my head to it, for one, couple reasons. One, I wanted to test to make sure that I wasn't 100% crazy, and to see if it really was talking to me in my head, and if it was, is it going to answer me? So I said in my head to it, what are you? Are you a Nephilim? Because, like I said, I believe in the Lord and the Bible, and I read over my Bible, and that's the only thing I could come up with where that even would have mentioned anything that could remotely, in my mind, in my opinion, be like them. And I said, are you a Nephilim? Are you a Nephilim? And it would not answer me. It made me so mad. It said, but it didn't answer that question, but it did answer me. And it said in the same exact thought in my head, very slow in the same way, and it said it just I'll never forget this. It's burned in my brain. I don't care if I live to be 1,000 years old, which I hope I don't, but I'll never forget it. It said, there are many of us, some good, some bad, just like people. And I'm like, okay, then as soon as I heard that, I'm thinking, get your phone, quick, take a picture. I looked down for a fraction of a second to get my phone, looked up, it was gone. And I'm like, dang it, I missed it. Yeah, I missed the picture, but it did answer me back, but it did not, and it purposely would not answer that question. Yeah, and then the next night after that, I have something called occipital neuralgia, which is like burning in the back of your head. Until my doctor got me on the right nerve medicine for that, I had to sleep sitting up in the chair. And it's not like Xanax or any kind of psychiatric medicines or anything like that. I've never heard voices before in my head. I don't take antidepressants. I don't take any kind of medicines that would have made me heard any voices, or where I've ever heard voices in my head ever, besides me talking to myself, which I do a lot. But the next night we were sleeping in the living room, and it was about, it seems to always be the same time, between 2:30, mainly 3:30, but between 2:30 and 4:30, 4-ish. And I heard this owl, except it wasn't an owl. It sounded like an owl with his mouth up to a megaphone. It was so ungodly loud. And the back of our house at the time had a little L shape in it, and it was back up beside the deck, and it was right beside the window where I was sleeping. It was so loud, I almost jumped out of my chair when I heard that, Jeremiah. It was just crazy loud. And then it did it 2 more times, and finally I woke my husband, like, get out, let's look. And there it was gone, except, and we did find, this time we found 16-inch footprints in that same spot, but we only saw 1 footprint. They had, after that, one of the next very weird situations we had, which all of this just kept happening, like they kept coming closer and closer to the house. The next day, we had ceiling fans on the back deck, and every time I went to put my 2 dogs out on the back deck, just, they're inside dogs, but just to get some stimulation, fresh air, within 5 or 10 minutes of being out there, I would hear bing, and I was like, what the heck is that? And it would get louder and harder and louder and harder. And then my dogs would start growling, and then they would start barking. Within 20 minutes, I'd have to bring them in, and the whole back deck had rocks all over it. They were throwing rocks at the back deck because somehow my dogs can see them when I cannot see them. And they do not like the dogs at all out there. I went to take my dog out the next day. It was about 2:30 in the afternoon, and there was not a soul around. And I walked back towards the creek, which is in the middle of a field. It's not like I'm deep in, remote in the woods like Harley is. Very brave to be doing that. I'm telling you, I wouldn't do that. Nope, sure wouldn't. So all of a sudden, and I'll send you a picture. It's just a tree, but I'll send you a picture of it if I haven't. It's like this 40-foot tall tree, and it's not a pine tree. There's no wind. There's no storm. It's a perfectly sunny day. There's not even a breeze, and it is hot as Hades outside. And all of a sudden, Jeremiah, I hear this whoop, and then I hear something answer back. And it happened so quick, I didn't even have time to. I didn't even have a pocket knife on me. I had nothing done. I had nothing, not even my cell phone. And I'm like, and my dog and me just froze. And he's on a leash, thank God. Oh, yeah, ever since then, I didn't need to take him on a leash outside. One, there's nobody around and there's no traffic. But after that, I did, after the first sighting. And all of a sudden, this tree starts shaking so hard right in front of us. Oh, I'm like 15 feet from this tree, and this thing is jerking back and forth like tug of war, jerking so violently. And all of a sudden you can hear crack, all these noises where the tree is being pushed over and broken in half from just a few feet off the ground. And not one other tree is moving. And all of a sudden, all these crows start squawking and screaming, and they all come flying out of the woods. And the next thing you know, this tree starts coming down right at me and my dog. Like, I ran, and which I got a bad knee. I got a knee replacement, and it's bad, and so my knee doesn't bend all the way, and I can't run. So I'm trying to run without falling and pulling him because he's growling and barking, and he doesn't want to move. And I'm trying to pull this 130-pound dog and trying to get the heck out of there back in the house. And before I barely made it out of the way, this whole tree comes down right in the middle of the field. I'm looking around. Anybody see this? Anybody? Hello? Hello? And there's nobody. I'm like, of course, there's nobody. I took a couple pictures of that, but they started throwing rocks at the house all night long. I have 2 inside cats, and they've done that at every place I live. Their famous thing to do is they do the cats. And I do have to stop myself and say, 9 years ago, I was the one saying, listen to these people, how crazy they sound saying this stuff. Now I sound like the crazy one. I'm saying this stuff because it's real. It's really happening. They like to tap on the window at nighttime, and the cats, when everybody's sleeping, will go tearing butt across the house, and they're ripping up the mini blind to get on. The mini blind's clanking and banging, and you're trying to sleep to get on the other side of the mini blind to see, and they're tapping on the screen of the window for the cats. And then when the cats get on the other side of the mini blind to see, then the Bigfoots will go on the opposite side of the house and start tap, tap, tap. And I know this because when my cats started doing this, I'm like, what the heck? Why are they running back and forth? At first, I thought they were chasing each other. And then I thought it were bugs. And then I thought it was a moth. And then I thought there was something inside the house. And I went through everything. And nope, I laid there awake one night and I heard it tapping like with the fingernail tapping. It was like tink, tink. And then the cats will go tearing butt across to the other side of the house. And then when they get to the curtain and they look, then the Bigfoots will go on the end of that. And they'll do this all freaking night long to where you cannot even get any sleep. You can't even sleep because they do this all night long. And they were doing that every single night. We walked down the railroad tracks like the following week, which literally is a little country road in front of our house in Newport where we lived. And you walk and you jump on the railroad tracks and you walk right to the wildlife refuge, which is, I don't know, a mile, if that. Walk really nice, all enclosed in woods on both sides. The farther you walk down, the further it steers you away from the houses. So we got to this one section, and I called it the boneyard because there's one area is a big high embankment, probably, I don't know, 15 feet high, maybe higher than that, maybe 20 feet. And you can't see anything. And the houses are you're like 3 acres away for the houses, and they can't see anybody. It's the back of the houses. And then on the right side, if you're going towards the wildlife refuge, is the water and the trees and swampy stuff. You can't see. There's nobody over there. And there's no houses over that way for miles, many miles. I see this boneyard pile. We saw a raccoon, 2 or 3 dogs, because the collars were still laying. The collars that the dogs were wearing were laying there with their names on them. A cat. It looked like some kind of big bird, I don't think there's pelicans around here, but like a big stork. Oh, gray cranes, that's what they were. A couple of cranes were laying there, 2 or 3. Possum. It looked like a bunch of reptiles, a whole bunch of turtle shells, probably 30 turtle shells just left. And they were all in this one 5-foot span. And I'm like, that is so weird. Like, why are all these animal bones just in this one little spot right on the other side of the water up against an embankment that you could clearly sit on and eat, chow down, and go on an animal buffet, and nobody's around? That's so weird to me. And we walked down to the reserve, and we get down there and look around, and on the way back, we heard something sounded like a like a dinosaur. Like I can't remember the name of that. Jurassic Park. Like the dinosaurs running, and you can hear the ground like boom, boom, like thumping. it was doing like that. You could actually, no, we're not close. We're on the railroad tracks. This is down a little 10-foot embankment, and it evens out to the trees that go into the reserve. So we're, at least 30, 40 feet away from where this is happening. And all of a sudden, it sounds like somebody literally drove a freaking dump truck into a tree. You're smash! The whole tree, the leaves were exploding off. You look up in the sky, and there's leaves like flying up into the air, up toward the sky. The tree exploded, like it got hit so hard, and the whole tree comes down. And it was windy that day, but 7-mile-an-hour winds, not 70-mile-an-hour winds. So I said to my husband, "Oh my gosh, what was that?" He's, "Oh, let's just keep walking. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. What is wrong with you?" And he's, "It's nothing." And he said later on he was just trying not to scare me. Too late for that, buddy. That's way too. That's already passed. So we walk a little further, and the same thing again. You can literally hear something running on the ground, and the same thing. Hits a tree, boom! Leaves go exploding everywhere, tree comes down. It was chasing us on the ground and then like jumping into the trees and hitting the trees with such force because this thing was so big and strong, the whole tree was coming down. And I don't mean a pine tree, I mean like a small oak tree or maple tree, 20-foot high, 30-foot high tree, like a normal size big tree you have in your yard coming down. And we got back to the house, and as we're almost back, it was the edge of dark, almost 7 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden we heard something coming. And it sounded like a bunch of vehicles, but we couldn't figure out where they were coming from because we had just been down to the wildlife reserve, and there's only one way in and one way out, our road. We would have heard them or seen them, and we kept hearing them coming, hearing it for like, it seemed like it was lasting forever. And all of a sudden, and we're on the edge of the road now. We got off the railroad tracks, walked across a little spot of grass to get to the road, and we're like almost in front of our house. And if you were in front of our house, you go past our house a little ways, there's like a sharp turn, and then you can go down. My husband's, whatever it is getting closer. He has the one dog on a leash, and I have my dog on a leash. And we turn around, and before you know it, there was, I don't remember, it was either 6 or 7 totally blacked out Jeeps. I don't know, he said, my husband said they weren't full Jeeps. They were some kind of off-road, on-road vehicle. They had hard tops, and they had, the whole entire thing was black everywhere. The windows were blacked out. The windshield, you couldn't even see who was in there. They had no tags on them. There was one, the front vehicle had a little tiny tag that said GOVT. And the only reason I saw that is because it almost mowed me down. Oh, they were doing like 40-something miles an hour, and they would have run me right over. They did not care. They were, on the way they were driving, they were all 2 feet from each other's bumper, all 6 or 7 of them. I don't even know how they drove like that without hitting each other, but they were getting it, and they were coming out of the wildlife reserve. And my husband had said, "Don't forget to tell them about the shooting." And I'm like, okay. So after they started getting close, I'm on the edge of the road. I'm figuring, okay, they'll just move over just a little bit to go. Nope. They were going to mow me right down. My husband literally took his arms as hard as he could and shoved me into a bush with the dog. And, of course, the dog's hooked to my arm. So me and the dog go flying into the bush. Had he not done that, they would have ran me right over. And he was like, those were some kind of military vehicles. And I'm like, how do you know? He's, because I saw the first tag. Did you see it? And I'm like, yeah. As I was flying onto the ground, he's like, "Carrie, if I didn't push you, they weren't moving. They would have run you right over." I'm like, "Could you see who it was?" He's like, "No, they're all completely blacked out." And I'm like, "How'd they get in there?" He's like, "I have no idea because we just walked this road and there's one way in and one way out." And he's, "I have no idea." We're getting ready to go in the house after I get out of the bush. And we're getting ready to go in the house, and all of a sudden we hear automatic gunfire. And then we hear some kind of, it sounded like rocks clacking, or some, I can't do it, but some men that have big hands can slap their hands together real hard, cupped, and make like a clacking sound. And we would hear automatic gunfire, and then we'd hear it sounded like rocks clacking, or somebody smacking their hands together, like probably rocks, because it was so loud. I don't even know where it was coming from because it was echoing off the woods everywhere. And then we heard 3 really loud, long, drawn out, whoa, like that, but way louder. I can't even do it. It's kind of screechy from the railroad track side, the wildlife reserve side, and then behind us, behind our house that goes into the mountains, which if you follow it, you can follow it all the way up into Gatlinburg, the Smoky Mountains. And then another scream coming from back there, and automatic gunfire. And I'm like, Jeremiah, it sounded like we were in the middle of a freaking war zone. And I'm like, what the, oh my God, what is happening right now? And there's no neighbor, like I said, nobody ever was outside. There was nobody around ever. Everybody who lived around there, they were just like super old and never saw anybody. And if you did, they were taking their little dog out when we had a chance to see somebody and talk to them and ask them anything. And he was like, I don't know what's going on, but we need to get in the house like now. It was crazy. It sounded like a war zone going on out there. But the Bigfoots, they amped up a lot. That following weekend, right after that whole scenario happened, my husband was home and he was super tired. He'd driven like 60, worked and he was a driver 60 hours that week, so we had to go into town to get something, and I'm like, I'll drive. And I was really tired too, and I shouldn't have been driving, but I went to back up in the driveway, and I have a SUV, and he's in a small little Nissan Coupe. I looked in my rear view mirror, and he was parked in my spot.
Bigfoot Society will be right back after these messages.
Everybody's got their own spots. That was my spot, his spot, whatever. He was parked too far over on the gravel. So when I looked in my mirror real quick, I thought that I was clear, but that's because I was already too close. So I back up and I hear crunch. So I busted his headlight out and smashed into the front of his car, cracked his fender. It was still drivable. It wasn't totaled or anything because I was just slowly backing in. But it did put a 2-foot wide, the depth of a basketball deep, at least maybe a basketball and a half deep, depth into my truck dent in the back corner, and 2 basketballs wide in the back corner of my truck. I was so upset because I love this SUV. It's an older one, but it's been the best vehicle I've ever owned. So I got out and I was like, oh my gosh. He's like, Carrie, it's okay. I'm like, you can fix it, right? You can fix it with like a hair dryer. I've seen people do it. He's no, this is like fiberglass. This is not like cheap plastic. Nope. This is like $2,500 worth of damage. I can't fix this. No. I'm like, oh, no. And I kept saying, please, I want this undone. I want to read you. Please, Lord, just make this undone, Lord. No. And I was so upset. So every day for a week, and I took my dogs out. I walked out there, and I had to walk right by. And I'm like, come on, please, I want this undone. I'm so upset. I love my truck. I didn't go anywhere the whole week. It was fall. It was not hot. It was late September. And he had to work on a Saturday, which is rare, and they had a fall festival. So I'm like, I'm going to go into town to the fall festival, get out of the house, stop thinking about the stupid giant dent in my truck. So I walk by my truck, and there's no dent. And I'm like, what? So I walk over and I look at the other side, and I'm like, okay, I know it was on the passenger side. On my running board, I see this pile of white rocks, and I don't know, I guess they're quartz. And there was this little tiny flower just ahead of a flower, like they're all over the yard. And the flower was like purple, just ahead of the flower, sitting on top of this white pile of rocks on the running board. And they were shaped like a little pyramid, maybe 3 inches wide, 3 inches high. And I kept looking, which side was it dent? Okay, no, it was that side. And I just couldn't believe it. So I'm feeling the truck with my hand, and it was smooth as could be. The only way you could even tell there had even been a dent there is the paint was still cracked, a little line in the paint. But it was completely smoothed out. And I'm like, what? So he gets home, and I totally forgot about saying anything until the next day, Sunday. And I think it was COVID time too. And we were getting ready to watch church on TV, and I'm like, oh, by the way, thank you for fixing my truck. And he's like, I didn't know your truck was broken. I'm like, yeah, the bumper, remember I crashed into your car? He's Carrie, I didn't fix your truck. We don't have money for that. It's an older truck. It's not worth spending that. I'm like, yeah, just tell me the truth. What credit card did you put it on? I did. And he's, let's go outside. So he goes outside, and he stands there, and he starts scratching his head, and he starts laughing. I didn't do this. Pretty much only one way to explain this. So let's get this straight. You didn't drive anywhere all week. Nope. You promised you didn't put it on any credit card. Nope. And it wasn't hot, so the heat couldn't have popped it out. All those were no's. So how does a dent like that pop itself out completely smooth, and then that little pile of rocks and flour was on there? And he looked up underneath there, and he said he could see where there was a palm print, the edge of a palm print, a big one. Like he doesn't have giant hands. He's got normal sized hands, but he said it was like 2.5 times bigger than his hand, just the edge of a palm print underneath the lip of that back fender. But I guess the happenings, as you want to call it, in Newport were happening so much. It was becoming to be daily, to where I just couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't getting any sleep. If you don't walk around, you don't sleep. You can't think. It was just affecting everything. And I'm like, I'm tired of I was walking. I like to walk down the road every day, walk my dog. And I heard somebody calling it pacing you. I heard something pacing me about 6 foot up on the edge of the road, little ridge line where the woods go all the way down the side of the road. One side's houses, the other side's woods. And every time I took a step, it was fall, and I love to walk. So I would hear crunch. I take a step, I hear crunch, and I'm like, what? So finally, and I knew that it could read my mind because it happened with the door thing. So I knew if I was going to do something, I had to do it quick and try to outsmart it. So I went to act like I was going to take a step down, except I stopped midway, and it stepped all the way down. And I spun around real quick at the woods. Now I'm like 3 feet from the woods. I should have been able to see this thing because it was literally right there, and I could not see it. And I don't know how. And I turned around when it stepped down. I heard the foot fall. I felt it land on the ground, and I heard it crunch the ground. And I turned around and I said, gotcha. And it laughed, but it laughed. For someone who's deaf, they have a certain way of talking, like a tone to their voice. It kind of laughed. I don't know, very like that. The way it laughed, it was like it was a very strange laugh, and I'm like, okay, I'm going home. So I turned around and went back home as fast as my legs could go. So every time I would even walk, then they started following me when I was walking, and I knew if they wanted to hurt me and grab me, they definitely could have. But I was tired of being scared because I don't know what these things are. It is scary, and it was very remote. There was nobody around, and I was alone. So I think one of the biggest last two things that happened in Tennessee, I was doing the dishes, and it was sunny, summer, and I looked out the back window, and I saw the classic shape of exactly what a cutout of a Bigfoot looks like walking. Now, this is really mind-blowing. Okay, imagine if you take a piece of glass and you shave it down and you make paper. I've seen this paper sold in stores where kids wrap their school books with it. And it's almost like a prism color paper. It's got blues and pinks and orange and purples and greens, the way you move the paper and the way the light hits it. I'm doing the dishes, and all of a sudden, I don't know, I felt that I needed to look up. So I look up, and I see this Bigfoot walk out It's not even looking at me. It comes out of the dark, and the only reason I saw it is because it stepped out of it was right inside the edge of the wood line, and there was a 15-foot spot where there was very sunny. The sun was hitting this area, and then it went back into the dark where it was daytime but dark where the sun wasn't shining because of the leaf cover. So I look up and I see this Bigfoot step out of the wood line and cross over. I always called it the gauntlet because there was a separation in the mountains back there that was 15 foot wide. And I used to go back there all the time and sit. There was a creek, and I'd sit back there and read in the chair because it was very peaceful until they ran me out of there. I felt overwhelming anxiety and fear back there and get out. I felt it so strong where I got to be terrified to even go anywhere near there, so I didn't. But I saw this thing step out in the sunlight. When the sunlight hit it, that's what its whole body looked like. It was wrapped in that kind of like paper, like glass. But I could see its arms swinging, and I could see the outline of its body because it was against the dark tree line in the background. And I'm like, what in the heck? Oh my gosh. I've seen it all now. And it didn't even look at me. It just, how it's from the shoulders, top of the shoulders hunched over forward, long arms swinging past its knees, just rolling on across there. And the way its knees moved blew my mind too, because it's almost like I didn't even notice it picking up its feet, but it had to be. It's just kind of rolled, very smooth, very fluid. Like when people walk, your head kind of goes up and down. I didn't see its head wasn't going up and down. Its body was moving forward, but it was just very smooth, fluid, steady, one level, even motion all the way across. And then it just stepped back into where the sun wasn't shining. And I just could not believe, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I think this is the last two things that happened that we were in Tennessee before I wanted to leave because I just got to be so frightened where it got to be so bad, Jeremiah, that I actually bought and put tinted up window film in the front dining room windows, because during the daytime I would have the front windows open and you could see inside the whole house. And I felt, and I knew it, and I still know it, that they had one of them just like watching me all day long. I felt it. I've never felt that anywhere else I lived. And I got to be so scared that I actually put up film where you could see outside, dark tint, you could see outside, and some sunlight could still get in, but if you were outside, you couldn't see inside. And as soon as I put that up, I felt like whatever was out there was gone, wasn't staying. But I didn't just pop it up in one day. I had been this feeling for months, and I kept saying something to my husband about it. And he said, the woods are so thick over there across the road. This is where the wildlife reserve is. He's like, if anything was in there, we wouldn't know it. But, I'm sorry, let me back up. When we did go down there to the reserve, we found a bunch of little nests where these like a whole bunch of reeds were like crisscrossed, woven in together, and underneath of them were these soft little straw nests, and they were right near the water, except they were like, 6 feet wide by 6 feet long, and you could see toe tracks, but big toe tracks, footprints in toe tracks, and they would just show up toes. In the water, it was about 4 feet of water, and the water was pretty clear. Little creek the part of the reserve going into these nests, some more of those where I sent you those pictures of these crisscross like nest-looking things. And when we were down there at the reserve, found this. We had hiked when we walked off the trail, off the main path, and walked into the woods a little bit because it was fall and it was clear and really wasn't afraid of snakes at that time. And I found this thing. It looked like a beaver dam. Now, The crazy part is it was 12 feet high by, 12 feet wide? No, maybe 10 feet wide. I'd say 10 feet high by 10 feet high. Yeah, because that's the size of our small room, our small bedroom. Yeah, and it was huge. And my husband's, oh, that's probably a beaver dam. I'm like, honey, the water's way over there. Water doesn't even come over here. Beaver is not going to build a dam that big and not away from water. So there was a tiny little opening in the front. And I'm like, I got my little keychain flashlight. I'm going to look in there. So, dumb me, I poked my head in there, and there's something in the back. And it started growling, a growl that I know was not a human growl, like nothing I've ever heard before. And he heard it. And he was like, run. I'm like, I can't run. I'm like, don't leave me. And he's like, all right, he goes, I'll let them eat me first. I'm like, thanks, babe. That's true love. So we got the heck out of there. But as I was trying to run away, I turned around and I snapped. I think I got half a picture of it. I don't know if I got a whole picture of it. But the way the sticks were woven together, they were not. That's no human. There wasn't even that many sticks around. It was just in the middle of the woods. You find like a hut like that, and the whole inside was pitch black, and it seemed to be hollow inside there. It was very bizarre. And then the next morning, I go to sit on the back deck and do my morning reading, and I open the back deck, and one of my fan blades, I think I was going to tell you that before, we had fans on the back deck, and they're like palm leaf fans. One of my fan blades, and I told my husband, I said, I'm hearing this fan spinning at night. And he's sometimes the mountain winds come. I'm like, I don't think that's what it is. I said, I think they're spinning like really fast because I can hear it. And those walls were paper thin. So I heard it spinning, and I kept hearing them spin for a while. And so he's like, it's just the wind. So the next day after the park situation, this where I found that stuff, I went out there, and the fan blade is broken, right snapped in two. Now the crazy part is it's not snapped off where the screws, where you screw the fan blade, which looks like a palm leaf, into the base. It's not broken there. It's broken like right in the middle. Something grabbed it and was spinning it around to play with it, and just was so strong. It just snapped. It was snapped completely in two in a place where it shouldn't even have been snapped. And I'm like, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. So I went in the house and I brought the fan blade in the house, and I came back out. I told my husband, he's like, just put the thing back outside. I hadn't even been in the house 5 minutes. I come back out, and there's this little tiny, like the palm of my hand, woven together like a wreath that was made with sticks, not soft reeds, but like tiny little some kind of bendable sticks, and was all woven into a wreath. And those purple flowers were all stuck in it, a whole bunch of them, and it's sitting right in the chair where I always sat and did my read. And I had just been out there, and it wasn't there because I pulled the chair out to do my morning read, and that wreath was not sitting there because it was very noticeable. The chair was white, one thing, and this little wooden wreath is dark brown and purple flowers. You can't miss it, and it was sitting right there. When I've heard people say how fast they move, when we were eating dinner in Tennessee, we went to. We had our cat. We had one of our extra bedrooms. Because there are 3 bedrooms. We turned into like the cat room. Their cat toys and cat tree and stuff. So I said, we were sitting there on TV. We were eating dinner on TV trays, and I said, "Did you shut the cat room mini blind? It's dark. And I don't want them looking in the house." And he knew what I was talking about. And he's like, "I don't know why." I said, "Because we're being looked at right now. I can feel it." And we both turned our heads, and at the exact same time. Oh, and he said, my husband said, if he needs a sign, anything to talk to you, he'll be glad to tell you stuff he's seen and experienced too with me and on his own since we've been together. But we both turned our heads at the same time, and as soon as I did, I saw it was standing. Now, a normal sized window is what, probably 4 feet wide, and it was a normal sized window. Probably knee height from the bottom of the window would be where your knee would be, where the bottom of the window would start and just go up. We both looked, and it was standing sideways. If it had been standing straight on, it would have blocked out the whole entire window. That's how wide it was. It was standing sideways and almost blocked out the whole window. And we could see, yep, big shoulders, had a round head, no like point on the head or anything like that, no neck. Never seen a neck on any of them. It's like this giant, fat bowling ball head stuck on these massive shoulders. And it saw us, and it was black. It was dark outside, though. We could not see any facial features. We just saw its body, and it saw us, and it moved so fast. How fast it moved, I was sat there, and I'm like, the best way to explain stuff to people in my mind is to give them something to compare it to visually. It moved, and I've seen it move twice as fast as a hummingbird. If you've ever seen a hummingbird at a feeder before, that's how fast they move. So when people say they were running ungodly fast, I mean, that's how fast they can move. So if one runs by you or is moving in your peripheral vision, you blink, oh yeah, you could miss it easily. If they were around, you easily miss it if you weren't aware of that. And I keep saying this, but this is the last thing that I can remember that happened in Tennessee. The night before we were moving, we were laying there in bed. Like I said, these walls were paper thin. If I was outside walking up to the front of the house, and if my husband was snoring, I would be able to hear him snoring outside the window. That's how thin these walls were. So our headboard of our bed was right up against the wall where we would park. And there's a little gravel, it was just like little pea gravel lined by lawn timbers. And then it goes to the back field where I saw the Bigfoot in the mountains. They would cross over from the river, the wildlife reserve, and then go into the mountains behind our house, which goes all into deep woods into the Smokies. And they would cross back and forth. It was about 3:30 in the morning. Again, I'm laying there, and all of a sudden, I hear talking. And I'm like, who the heck's standing outside our house at 3? First of all, none of my family lived in the state. We were the only family that lived in the state. All my family lived in different states, including my kids. Nobody knew where we lived except our neighbors, which we only talked to 2 of them when we saw them when they came out. So nobody knew where we lived. Nobody had been to our house. So there was nobody that should have been outside. And I'm like, who's talking? So I'm laying there, and my husband's asleep because all of it happened so fast. Sometimes you don't have time to wake up somebody or do something. So I hear talking, and it reminded me of 2 gremlins, because they were like, and then I hear another one talking back to it, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm hearing this. It was just so creepy. And the voice, it had a voice like a voice like we could talk, but it wasn't the same. It was using a language, and one was answering it, talking back to it, and it was directly behind the wall. And sometimes they would even tap on the wall. That's another reason too, that we left, because I could never sleep. Sometimes they would tap on the wall right directly behind where my head was, and I'm like telling my husband, I'm like, there's like literally probably 4 inches between my head and where this thing could literally push its hand right to the wall and grab me. That's terrifying. And they would just tap on the wall as they would cross back and forth nightly to go over to the river, I'm assuming to hunt deer and to get water, because that's where the water source and fish were. And it would just tap, hey, we're moving by, and then tap again, hey, we're coming back too. And of course it's going to wake you up. The day we went to leave, the next day after that, my SUV was loaded up, and I was pulling a trailer, and he was driving a large 26-foot Penske truck pulling his car. And we pulled out of the driveway, and we stopped in the front of the house in the middle of the road, and we were like, bye, house, bye. And we told our neighbor came to tell us bye. And we'd asked her about this before, and she said, yeah, but I'm not going to go on any show, and I'm not talking to anybody. Everybody around here knows that they're here. We just don't talk. She called them wood boogers. Everybody knows about them old wood boogers, and we don't mess with them, and they don't mess with us. They've been around forever. That's just the way it is around here. We just don't talk about them. And I'm like, and she wouldn't talk to me about it. And we got to be really good friends, but she just would not talk to me about it. And we went to leave, and she said goodbye, and she went back home, and we're in the middle of the road making sure we're both of our GPSs are locked on to the same location in case we get separated on the highway, because it was a 6-hour drive to Indiana where we were going. And all of a sudden, our phones start flipping screens, and instead of going to our location in Indiana, it kept just repeating our address, kept flashing across the screen in Newport, Tennessee, our house address there, and our phone screens just kept flipping. One of our phones doing that is one thing. First of all, we don't have the same phone plan. We're not on a phone plan at all. We got prepaid phones, and we don't even have the same carrier either. So both of our phones could be doing the exact same thing, because I'm like, I don't know, my phone's acting crazy right now. And he's like, what's yours doing? And I told him, he's like, look at my phone. So he walked over, and we both held our phones side by side, and they were doing the exact same thing, like super fast. And he was, hey, I got an idea. So he's, put your phone down for a minute. I'm like, okay. So he's, bye guys, I love y'all. He's like, we gotta go. We gotta go take care of our family. We're going somewhere where Carrie can get better medical care. You guys take care. Everything will be okay. And then as soon as he said that, boom, both of our phones at the exact same time started working again. I don't even think, there's no way that could be a coincidence. He's like, okay, I guess we're on the road now. I'm like, I guess we are. And that's when we left for Indiana.
Special thank you to Carrie for coming on the show. This is part 1 of her interview. If you want to hear the second part, it's coming out in a few days. Before we wrap this episode, I want to say something directly to a very specific group of listeners. If you're in the military, any branch or forces, and if you've seen something that no one can explain, or if you're a national park ranger or forestry worker who's been told to stay quiet, or if you're a pilot who's seen something strange down on the ground, or if you're with the FBI, a federal agency, or working intelligence, and you stumbled upon something you're not allowed to talk about, and if you're a firefighter, paramedic, or search and rescue responder who's heard screams or found tracks that didn't make sense, if you're in the logging industry, on a remote oil field, or a trucker with government contracts, and you've had something happen that you've never told a soul, and if you're a biologist, a wildlife specialist, or a field researcher under contract who has found evidence you're not allowed to report, if you're a pastor, a missionary, or someone on a spiritual retreat, and you saw something that shook your faith, or if you work in the shadows, CIA, NSA, or anything with clearance, and you've seen what the public hasn't, then I want to talk to you. Even if it's anonymous, you can reach me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. The world needs to hear what you've been forced to carry alone, and you're not alone. You've got the story. We've got the mic. See you in the woods. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.